Hey Fish Fam, Chris Roma here, aka Roma Aquatics. Today I'm going to be showing you a do-it-yourself overflow. It's a little different than the ones you normally see. The ones you normally see are a little bit bulkier and cost about double as the one I'm about to build. This was an experiment and it turned out great. This was the first time I've done something like this. I thought it was an original idea, but unfortunately after I built it, I did a Google image search for do-it-yourself PVC overflow, and there was a video back in 2012 showing something along these lines, not exactly the same, but pretty similar. So I can't claim it for myself, but I thought I'd share it because I've seen plenty of do-it-yourself overflow videos and I've never seen a model that looks quite like this and quite as small and quite so cheap. So stay tuned and stick around. Okay, so when I want to build an overflow for my tanks, this is generally the model that I choose to build up until now. But I wanted to show you the old model so you could see the difference between what I'm about to build. But basically this model, as you can see, it's overflowing right now. It sucks water in through that tube there. And it goes around, it's kind of dark in there, but it goes around the bottom of a tube. I can pull it up. It goes around that tube, and then it goes up and over the side here, down around, and then up and out. And this pipe's here to make sure that it stays prime and doesn't become a siphon and stays in overflow. But basically, as you can see, it works very well, but look at the size of this thing. It's huge, it's big, and it's bulky. So my goal was to build something. Obviously, I just threw that together. It wasn't taped together. I just threw that together for the video because I'm not going to be using that type of model anymore because they're big and bulky. So I wanted to do something that was much smaller, still worked effectively, and kept the price point very low. And the price point's actually lower than what it cost to build one of these. So let's show you what I came up with. And here is the design I came up with. It works perfectly. I'm only using it for 10 gallons for a drip system. So if you're thinking that airline is definitely not enough flow for you and you need it on a bigger scale, you're probably right, unless you're using it for a drip system. But this can easily be revamped to be made on a bigger scale. I'm actually going to do one on a bigger scale for you at the end of this video just to show that it can be done even though I don't need it. But as you can see, the whole overflow is just one small little tiny pipe in here with a hole that sucks in there. I have a piece of Plex tubing that goes around here into another little piece of overflow, and then it drains out. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out so I can show you a little better, but look how small this thing is compared to that big giant thing over there laying there. And all it is two 29-cent end caps, a street elbow and a normal elbow, and a tiny bit of Plex tubing. This probably costs maybe $3 to make, if that. And let's get going. I'll show you how to make it and show you how to prime it, show you how to use it. So let's get to it. So this is what you're gonna need. You're gonna need a street elbow, a normal elbow, two end caps, hot glue gun, piece of Plex, PVC cutters, airline tubing, PVC, something to heat up the Plex tubing with, a drill, and a unibit. And these are PVC cutters. They help, but you could use a saw as you've seen in my other videos, or just any type of hacksaw, anything to cut with. But let's get started. It's pretty easy. So let's get this stuff out of my way, get rid of the stuff we're not gonna need. I'm gonna go plug the hot glue gun in so it's nice and hot when we need it. To get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is cut the PVC to the length that we're going to want. I'm going to start with the inside piece, which I generally want a little shorter. And this doesn't have to be exact. Obviously, you see I'm not really measuring or anything. That looks good to me. Could be a little long, could be a little short. It looks like it's going to be a little bit bigger than the one I already have. The next one's going to be for the one outside the tank. I like to make that one about an inch deeper. So yeah, this one's definitely going to be a little bit bigger, but that's fine. It's not huge. So the next thing we want to do is drill or put our end caps together, basically, just to see what this is going to look like, because we're pretty much almost done already. So you just assemble the elbows put the pipes together, and boom, you're done. So basically the next thing you're gonna wanna do is drill your hole for your input. And I know from experience, I want my input hole about an inch down from where the elbow meets up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and drill a hole about an inch down there. And it might slip at first, but once you get a little bit of a hole going, it goes pretty easy. And you could actually use the unibit for this to get a nice big hole over here. And then wherever this hole is on the front, you wanna make sure the hole you drill for the airline tube on the back is much lower. But you don't want it all the way at the bottom, because when you put the flex tube in here, that goes to the bottom, and you want the drainage hole to be at least an inch or two above the bottom of that. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking right here is probably about a good midway point between the bottom and the hole I just drilled. And that's generally a good place to go. And I thought this was an original idea, guys, when I originally thought of it, but then I did a Google image search for do-it-yourself PVC Overflow. And it turns out I found one image out of all the overflows of something that resembled this, slightly resembled this. So I can't say, well, this was an original idea. I just didn't think of it first. But I'm just gonna put my unibit on there and go ahead and just make these holes a little bit bigger. I got this unibit on Amazon for $10, which is like unheard of. But as you can see, I made that a nice big hole for where my water's gonna flow in there. You're also gonna wanna make 2 large holes on top here, because you want the flex pipe to go in those holes, and you also want it to be big enough to let air into the system. So this is where you let air in. This whole elbow piece actually isn't even used for water. Water doesn't flow through the top elbow at all. It's basically just used as a support to hold the PVC straight into your tank. I thought of a way where I was gonna just drill holes in the top and use a zip tie to hold these, but it turns out when you put them in the tank, they just start to float up and stuff. Because I wanted to make this as cheap as possible, and if you could cut that out, that's another $1.50, or depending on how, you know, it could be 75, $1.50, depending on where you get it. But I figured it's worth having those pieces in there for the stability. But this is what we're left off with right now. I'm gonna go ahead and drill the holes in the top that I said were needed, and you're gonna try to wanna go pretty much direct center. And then we can make oblong ovals from there. So yeah, like I said, you can make this hole pretty large. And then I'm actually gonna extend it down. So that's a very large hole, because like I said, I want this flex tube to fit nicely down in there and still have room for air to get in. So that's about perfect. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And again, it's kind of hard to start the hole on the PVC. Like that, it slips. But once you get it going, it kind of digs in. Big hole on that side, perfect. So I take it apart, get all these PVC pieces out. Make sure these are lined up right. So this air line, I'm gonna go ahead and stick in here. And that you could hot glue to make sure it doesn't leak. That's what I do. And then this flex line, what I'm gonna do is stick it in here. Bend it over, stick the other line, make sure these go all the way to the bottom, and then we can see we have plenty to cut off here actually. So the best way to probably do this is just to, don't kink this. So just slightly bend it, try not to kink it. Leave yourself some at the top and bring it down. Use your cutters, leave yourself a little extra. That way you know for sure it's long enough. But you see I'm leaving myself some at the top and some at the bottom extra. Once you go too short, you're screwed. You could always cut more off. And then you get something that looks like that. And then what I like to do is cut these on like a 90. Because like I said, they're going all the way to the bottom. And if they get flat on the bottom, it could cut off the water. And so that's why I cut them like this. So if it goes like flat on the bottom, it's not going to cut off the water supply. But these go in here, just like that. All the way down. All the way down. And there's your Plex tube. And then what I like to do once I see, you could be done right now. You don't need the blowtorch or anything. This could be good to go. You could add a check valve in here if you want to make it easy to prime. I don't care about making it easy to prime because it pretty much stays primed all the time. But what I like to do at this point is just take my blowtorch. I'm probably out of shot here, so I'm going to have to readjust the camera once I get this lit. I got the torch there, I just kind of very gently in and out of the heat. And this basically is just going to help it hold its bent shape and not want to straighten back out. Like I said, it's not needed because the pipe kind of holds it in there nice, but I like to do it so when I pull it out, it kind of has that nice horseshoe ring shape to it still. And this is actually still quite long. I'm just going to shape it while it's in there. Make sure they stay at the bottom. You want these all the way at the bottom. That's another reason to kind of shape it and get it to stay there, because you can get it to where you want it and then heat it up, and then it doesn't want to unfold really. It'll stay kind of where you put it. And I'm pretty happy with that. Here we are. We're done. Still wants to come up a little bit on this side, so I'm just going to kind of play with it while it's drying and kind of see this side wants to lift up. So what I'm going to do is push that all the way to the bottom and just lift this up a hair. And what that's going to want to do is push the plastic on that side down. But like I said, this is pretty long anyway, so I'm probably just going to end up cutting, and I'll just cut this side a little bit more than I cut the other side to make sure they both hit the bottom. And I'll do that right now. So I'm going to cut maybe ½ inch off on this side. Should have went on an angle, more of an angle. Oh, I'm probably out of shot now, sorry. I just cut a little bit off. Put that in there. And you can see that this side wants to go down. So what I'm going to do, see if flip it around, see which side is more even. This side wants to go down a lot more. So flip it back to the way it was. This side's all the way down. How much more down does this go? About an inch, which means I need to take an inch off of this side. And that is perfect. That is sitting in there snug. I can't really push either side down anymore. So there's our overflow. Let's go get it in the bucket and see it in action. Okay, so at this point you could either install the check valve, which you would just put it on the bucket. Make sure I'm in shot here. So you would just put this on the bucket and suck on the check valve to fill this with water, and that would prime it and it would start going. But like I said, check valves are like $1 or $2 each, and really all you got to do is submerge the whole unit, make sure everything's wet, everything's full of water, so both horseshoes, if you want to call it, are full of water, and then put it back together, making sure you just keep it underwater the whole time you're reassembling it. Make sure you put that Plex tube back in the right way, and then when you pull it out, it will be primed. So let me turn it to the sun, but you can see it's draining there. Pretty nice solid flow. It's going to still draining. There's quite a bit of water in here, so I'm going to pause the video up and let this drain until it stops, and then I'll add more water to show you that it's not a siphon, it's an overflow. Okay, so the overflow has stopped. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you that it is at the water level where I drilled the hole. no longer draining. And I'm just gonna go ahead and add some more water. And there we go, overflow working. And again, like I said, I realize this isn't the strongest flow in the world, but look how small it is. It's 1/2" PVC and airline tubing and plex tubing. But it's perfect for what I need. I'm using this to overflow a drip water change system. So this is absolutely perfect. But I'm gonna go ahead right now and build a bigger version of this for those of you who actually want to use this overflow for some type of sump or filter. This is my homemade overflow made from 1.5" PVC for my 75-gallon tank. Oh, this is a homemade silencer I made because the overflow is loud. If you'll listen when I pull that off, you could hear the difference. That's just a CD, blank CD thing with holes drilled in it. But as you can see, the water is draining away right down. It's coming in from over there. Okay guys, so here's the bigger model just to see if this is scalable, and I think it is. So I'm using 1.5" PVC on this one, but I think you could go up as big as you want. This is just a proof of concept, but again, this is an experiment for me as well. I've only made the little model that you've seen me make, and now I'm going to make the big model. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assemble this. What you need is 2 elbows. You could get 1 street elbow, 1 normal elbow, but the street elbows 1.5" are kind of pricey. So I chose just to cut a piece of PVC to connect these, and that's the cheap way to do it. So that's connected. I just have another piece of PVC that we're going to put on one side. Another connector to connect the T. And I put a T on this one. You could also just drill a hole and hot glue tubing there if you want to save money and not buy the T. But this is basically what the whole constructed overflow looks like. Not that big hefty thing that you just saw in the last clip, if I remembered to put it in, which I hope I did. It's one of my old videos of the do-it-yourself overflow if you want to go back and check out my videos if I forgot to put it in, but I'll try to remember to put it in. So at this point, all we need to do is drill. We need to drill our input hole, and we need to drill our holes on top to put the tubing that I forgot to mention that we need. And this tubing is what's going to go across the top and through and connect these two. Because again, this whole elbow, this whole top piece is there just to hold the rest of it in place on the tank. No water flows through this top piece. And you actually want air to get into the top piece. To prevent it from becoming a siphon. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just like in the last one, I'm just going to open up 2 big old holes on top of these elbows. And again, I got this Unibit right here on Amazon for $10. They sell it at Home Depot for like 40 or 50. It's ridiculous. So definitely, it's titanium. It's a great bit. Works awesome, as you can see. So it's definitely worth the $10 versus spending what the hefty price that Home Depot wants for it. So we got 2 very large holes on top. That's what we're looking for. Probably got a bunch of PVC stuff in here. So now all we need is 1 for the input. And remember, when we're drilling the input, we want it in between the output and the bottom of this. So when we're drilling the input, we want it higher than this when we're drilling the input. So we want to make sure the input's probably about in the middle of there. So about there. So ideally, you'd want to adjust this based on where you put your input instead of the other way around. But I don't care where the input is on this because I'm not actually going to be using this. This is just to show you guys kind of a proof of concept. So I recommend drilling this first and then cutting these 2 pieces of PVC to the lengths that you need, to where this is a little bit below this, and your input valve, this is lower than your input valve, but the hose in here at the bottom of here is still higher than that. So I'm saying this very confusing. Let's try that one more time. So the bottom of this and your input hole that you're gonna drill, you want the output to be in between those two, about in the middle. So here's the bottom. I'm gonna drill the input hole here. The output's about in the middle. And the idea behind that is when you put this tube in here, the water level is gonna stay right there or higher. But the lowest it'll ever get is right there. And you want this tube to stay submerged below the water at all times so it stays primed. And same thing with this deal. That's why this tube goes down so much farther. You could make this shorter, but you run the risk of losing your prime the shorter you make these tubes. So just keep that in mind. But I'm gonna go ahead and drill the input hole. There's where my water is gonna go in. And we're gonna, again, you could put a check valve on this to prime it easy, but I'm gonna go ahead and prime it the same way I primed it in the last video and get a shot of this thing in action. And I hope it stays together because I'm not gluing it. Okay guys, so I'm gonna prime this the same way I primed that last one. Just submerge the whole thing. Make sure it's full. And then, where's my hose? Here's my hose. Submerge that. Make sure that's nice and full. Flip it over. Just make sure you keep them ends underwater until the thing is completely together. So now I'm just shoving that down that side all the way to the bottom. That's important. This one all the way to the bottom. And you can see I probably could have cut this tube a little shorter, but no big deal. And let's go ahead and pull it out. Adjust the camera here. My dog's liking that water. All right, so now we can see that it's about level here where the input hole is. It's still primed, there's water in the hose, so let's go ahead and put some water in the bucket. Alright, so I got a pretty fast input here, can't handle that speed. And I'm assuming the weak spot is this kink here. So I bet if you used a thicker airline here, this would run much faster. I could also probably put a bigger input in there. I think that's slowing it down too, the slow input. That hole's not too big. But as you can see, since it just fell apart, there's no water going through the middle there. They are literally just there for support to hold this. So actually, if you have a bigger rack, it seems to be flowing a lot better apart like this because the hose isn't kinked as much. So whatever you could kink your hose, but that's basically the idea of the overflow. And I think this is working really well. It's a good idea of how this can be expanded. The flow isn't quite fast enough for what I would expect for a 1.5 inch tube, but again, I think the downfall here is this small diameter right here. If we were to put another piece of PVC, say a 1 inch piece, and connect it over with elbows, it would be a little bit more expensive, but it would be a nice 1 inch thick line that's not going to bend or kink, and it would probably run much faster. But as you can see, the overflow basically pretty much stopped. I could tuck it back under the water line, start it again. But there's the idea, and that's much smaller than what we're used to. Okay, and I'll throw this right at the end. This was the first one I built as a proof of concept before I decided to see how small I could make it. But as you can see, I just used airline hosing and PVC, and basically my system that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have tanks up here that drip water into all of my tanks much slower than this. I turned up the drip rate so you could actually see it dripping. Normally was dripping at like 1 drip a minute. but basically it's going to drip in there, and then as it fills up, this is going to be behind the mat and filter, so I'm not going to need that little piece of foam in the overflow hole. But the overflow hole is right there. I stuck a little foam in there so the shrimp babies can't go in there for now until I get it back behind the mat and filter. But it drains down into this 10-gallon tank. And as you can see, it's dripping out as it's dripping in. So this is just the proof of concept to see how it works. Now I'm gonna build it, like I said, you guys just saw me build a very small version of this. That small version is now gonna go on all of these tanks, and then I'm gonna tee off the air lines and put a dripper in all of the tanks so they're all dripping, and then they'll all drain directly to my sump pump. Okay guys, I hope I saved you a little bit of pocket change and a little bit of space in your tank. Now there's only that little bit of PVC showing in your tank. That's a little bit better. But anyway, that's it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Later, fish fam.